Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome to Together We Explore, the podcast that takes you on an exciting journey around the globe, right from the comfort of your home. I'm your host, Greg Faust, and I can't wait to share with you the wonders of the world, one episode at a time. Now imagine this. You're sitting back, perhaps sipping on a favorite drink, and with every word I say, you find yourself transported to another culture, another landscape, and another adventure. That's the magic of travel, and that's exactly what we're going to explore together each week. In this podcast, we'll dive into vibrant cities, hidden gems, breathtaking landscapes, and the unique stories of the people we meet along the way. Whether we're wandering through the bustling streets of Tokyo, savoring the flavors of a French market, or trekking through the mountains of Peru, I want you to feel like you're right there beside me. So get ready, pack your bags, figuratively, of course. To give you a taste of what to expect in upcoming episodes, let's start by teasing a few of our adventures. First up, we'll venture into Italy, where I'll take you through the historic streets of Rome. We'll visit ancient ruins, dive into mouth-watering pasta dishes, and experience the rich history that lingers in every corner. Then there's our journey to Belize, where we swam with the sharks, the island of Cape Hawker, home to a one-man restaurant set up with a small grill on the beach, cooking fresh lobster and the best jerk chicken that I have ever had. You'll hear stories of local customs, the delicious street food that you absolutely can't miss, and tips for navigating the vibrant culture. But it's not all about famous destinations. I also plan to explore the lesser-known paths with you. How about paddleboarding in the clear fresh water springs called Weeki Wachee right here in the U.S., in Spring Hill, Florida? I'll recount tales of hiking Blood Mountain along the Appalachian Trail in Georgia while encountering unique wildlife and experience the raw beauty of nature. And let's not forget the people. Each location has its own unique characters who bring the places alive. I'll feature interviews with locals and fellow travelers about their experiences, their favorite spots, and their trips. You'll get insights that go beyond the typical tourist attractions. I want to make this podcast to be a community. I encourage you to reach out and share your travel stories, questions, and suggestions. What destinations you're dreaming of, what experiences you've left to mark on your heart. I'd love to hear from you. All right, our fellow explorers, before we wrap up today's introduction, let's talk about some of the fun segments you can look forward to. Each week, I'll include a packing tip section where I'll share essential items to bring based on your destination climate, culture, and activities. We'll also have local delicacies where I'll highlight a must-try food from each place we visit, enabling you to not only see the world, but also experience its flavors. And of course, I'll sprinkle in some travel hacks, those little nuggets of wisdom that can make your travels smoother and more enjoyable. As we embark on this journey together, I want you to visualize each episode as a mini vacation. Also, yourself to be immersed in the sights, sounds, and stories. Let's take a moment to close your eyes and dream about the adventures awaiting us. Imagine the road ahead is filled with possibilities, inspiration, and a love for discovery. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. I'm thrilled to have you along for the ride. Be sure to subscribe Together We Explore wherever you get your podcast, and let's set off on our adventure together. Well, hello, explorers. My name is Greg. I'll be your host. This is Together We Explore. So I wanted to get into a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Canton, Ohio. That's a little town in Ohio, a little bit south of Cleveland, known for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm not a big football fan, so don't hold that against me. I know it's a very big town full of football fans, and I'll do a podcast later about the Hall of Fame that is in Canton, Ohio, and some other things around there. But right now, that's just a little bit about me. That's where I'm from originally. I've been living in Florida for about 21 years now, I believe. And I just love it here in Florida. The weather is always just the right, maybe a little hot in the summertime, but not too bad. During the winter, it's beautiful in the 70s, sometimes lower 80s, and I could live with that. Um, yeah, I've always had a passion for traveling. I enjoy going to other countries and seeing other cultures and just pretty much in seeing the sights and the feel of just everything that other places have to offer. There's so many beautiful sceneries in different countries with mountains and islands and different places. It's just something I've always felt passionate about. I think the best part is you can feel like a sense of euphoria, I guess, when you visit these places and you just experience this. And I kind of want to make that what this podcast is about. I would like to, have everyone feel the way that I do. So when I do my interviews and when I speak about these different places, I want everyone to feel like they're there. And then if they would love to go see these things and maybe have some experiences for themselves, that's kind of what my goal is with this podcast. And also share some things that, maybe ways to save some money or ways to go around maybe the touristy areas or the places where that may not be too tourist friendly, stuff like that. I enjoy like actually going into the towns and sitting down and having a meal with the authentic food from the area. And if I can, I like to try to speak to them and get to know and ask, hey, what is your favorite thing about this food, or what is your favorite thing about this place? And then the things that I've learned from that, I'm gonna kind of bring to here to this podcast. And I've have a lot of friends that travel along with me, and some that travel on their own and go to these different places, and I'll have them on the show and be able to bring some of their excitement and their feelings to the podcast. I'll be bringing some interviews in that have been to places like Peru, to Brazil, to a lot of places in South America, Ecuador, Costa Rica, and I'm also going to have guests that will talk about their trip to Thailand and to Phuket and Bangkok. And there's going to be so many different places that and also there's going to be more places that I'm going to explore just so I can have information to bring to you here on the podcast. One story I would like to talk about is something the most recent. I'm here in Port Charlotte, Florida, and there's a lot of places near the beach here. I mean, we have some beautiful beaches. We're not far from Siesta Key in Sarasota, and we have been going through a lot of hurricanes, and a lot of things have happened in the last probably 4 years. We've went through, I think, 3 or 4 hurricanes that hit right around our area. Hurricane Ian came through a couple years ago and totally wiped out my house. I luckily I evacuated and stayed in my family's house up in Ohio, and then but I came back shortly after just to check on the house and try to get things in order, and ended up sleeping on an air mattress because the whole roof uh, pretty much caved in, and water poured through the whole ceiling and onto the walls and destroyed pretty much the whole house. The structure was still there, but everything kind of seemed to just be wet and break apart, and the drywall was full of water, which later turned into mold. And anyway, so cleaned up all of that, and I mean, I know a lot of people say, "Oh, I wouldn't want to live in Florida because of all the hurricanes," and they have been more frequently recently. But I would give up and deal with a hurricane anytime to the cold winters in Ohio. And I'm just not I'm just not into the cold weather. Some people love the cold weather. They love the snow, and to me, it's just not something I enjoy. Not even the first blanket of snow. It's still not appealing to me. But everybody's different. So anyway, back to the story. I recently was here for Thanksgiving, and usually I try to go up to Ohio and spend time with my family on the holidays. And I was here, and my roommate was having his family here, and he was like, "You're more than welcome to be here and have dinner with us." And I was kind of hesitant. I just feel kind of like I'm cheating on my family if I spend it with other families, or I kind of enjoy being by myself around these things. So I decided to take my paddleboard and go to the water. I decided to go to Boca Grande, one of my really, really favorite spots to go. And right before you go over the Boca Grande Bridge, there's these little islands right off to the left of the bridge. One's called Little Dog Island, and there's an old railroad trestle there, and and the water's so clear and blue, and you can see right through. And then the water's not very deep, probably up to different parts, of course, but a lot of it is shallow, and maybe about up to my waist, maybe. And I don't know, I just felt like I needed a day to myself, and this was probably one of the most beautiful and serene moments that I've had in quite a while. And I took my paddleboard, and I parked my car over right before you go over the bridge. There's a little parking area, and I parked my car there and took my paddleboard right out there into the waterway there, and made my way under the bridge. I brought a lunch. I brought some ham and some cheese and some hamburger buns, and I kind of packed them in a bag and put them on my paddleboard, and I had my little drink, and I have a little drink holder on my paddleboard, and I had my drink, and brought some music. I had my little speaker there, my little waterproof speaker, and just pushed off there, and it was quiet. There wasn't a lot of people on the water. The temperature was probably about, I would say, about 80 degrees, 82 degrees. And this was just, 82 degrees on a Thanksgiving November morning, and it was gorgeous. And the wind was blowing, but it wasn't a cool breeze. It was just kind of like this nice warm breeze coming from, and the sun was there and the sun warmth on my face. And I paddled over right under the bridge, and then kind of was just sitting back and taking my time. I didn't have anybody with me to rush me and say, let's go, we got so much time. So I ended up just kind of just moving along very slowly, listening to music and, just becoming one with myself. So I paddled just very slowly, and I went around and kind of stopped for a second and got off my board in the shallow water and near the railroad trusses and took some pictures. And I really just felt so involved, like everything around me just felt like it was all coexisting with me all at the same time and feeling the same euphoria that I was feeling. I saw some birds nesting over near the railroad or on the railroad trusses, and then I saw a couple fish jumping out of the water, some mullet, I believe, and it was just so great. And I went ahead and paddled a little further up and got to that first island, Little Dog Island. And from the hurricane, this island used to be really full of trees and had little nooks in it where you could kind of go in and sit on the sand and be blocked by the sun. But from the hurricane, it really just took out all the trees, and it was kind of bare in the center, but it still had some trees that were tumbled over and the roots were showing, and it looked to me like kind of like driftwood, but laying sideways with the roots up in the air. And I just thought, oh my goodness, what a beautiful place to take some good scenic pictures and feel this this beautifulness and the devastation that happened, even though it was bad for what happened and it destroyed a lot of places, especially in Boca Grande. I've noticed a lot of stuff was destroyed there. But just to know that there was still beauty there, even after the hurricane had ripped the trees out, it was still so beautiful. And it's amazing how things kind of will go back so quickly after a devastation like a hurricane. And nature itself just kind of fixes itself and builds on. And there was some nests inside these trees that were laying over, and life was starting all over again there for these animals, and what things were living there on the beach. And I just was like, man, I stood there for a while. I laid down on my board, which I had tied up, so if the waves came in and pulled the paddleboard back, it wouldn't go anywhere. So I had it tied up to one of the trees, and I just laid on my board and kind of just stared at the sky and watched around me. And shortly after that, I was looking around and I saw a dolphin jump up, and it was like this dolphin, she was jumping so high, trying to get attention. I mean, there wasn't a lot of people out there, so I'm assuming that the few people, myself including, that were out in the water that day, this dolphin was just trying to get our attention. And it worked, because I tried to follow that dolphin and watch him. I tried to take some pictures and video, but of course, once he did his stunt and jumped high into the air and jumped and down into the water, he disappeared. And then, of course, I didn't have any way to capture that moment because it was so fast. But then, then I paddled on. There's another little island a little bit further past. It's they call it different names, but it was called Horseshoe Island, and it's a nice little sandy island that has it's kind of shaped like a horseshoe, where the one part of it just goes in a bit, almost in a circle, and the sand goes out into the middle of the water. So leaves like a lagoon in the center. And I've stayed there. I've camped out there, brought a tent in the past and stayed there. And another one of my favorite places to just camp, and you're kind of cut off from the street, and you're not near any people, and it's just, and at night, oh man, it's just a nice place to camp. Not to jump off the subject, but one time I stayed there and camped, and it was in the middle of the night. I was waving my feet in the water right on the sandy part and the outer edge of the horseshoe, and all of a sudden I noticed there was these little luminescent lights just shining through the water, and I was like, what is that? And I've never seen such a thing before. It was like I would run my hands through the water, and wherever it was disturbed, it would light up. And later I was told that it was plankton, and that when the plankton are disturbed, they light up. I'm not sure if that's exactly what it was, but man, it was so beautiful. It was like having all these little lights, like looking at the stars in the sky, but actually in the water. And I also threw my fishing line out and tried to reel it so I could watch. And as you reel it in, you could see the line of lights just following behind it. It was really beautiful. I didn't mean to get off the subject, but so that happened there. But this time on Thanksgiving, I ended up paddling over there, and there was a couple young kids, probably in their early, like, late teens, early 20s, and there was I think 3 boys and a dog, and they happened to have tents on that little island, and they were camping there for the day. And I noticed they were out in the water and they were fishing, and the dog was running. The dog was running up and down the horseshoe part of the island, and I didn't want to disturb them. It seemed like they were having such a good time. So I ended up just paddling away from there and went back towards the little dog island. And as I got back to the little dog island, I found a little spot that was kind of shallow on the other side of the island that I wasn't at earlier when I was just there before that. And I kind of sat there and I thought, well, now's a good time for me to have my lunch. So I had my drink sitting there in the center, and I didn't really have anywhere to put the stuff down to make this sandwich. And I also brought some chips along with me. And so I thought, I'll just make my little lunch and I'll just sit here and relax for a little while. And so I took my sandwich and started with the hamburger bun, and I set the bun bottom on top of my drink cup on top of it, where I had a lid on the cup so water wouldn't get in and stuff for when I'm paddling. And I set it there and I made my little sandwich, and I had cheese, and I even put some of the chips on top of my sandwich, and then I ate it. And I mean, it's not the best cuisine, but man, in that situation, it hit the spot. That it was so good just to have that sandwich just right there, all by myself, a little lunch. And I don't know, it just seemed to be such a good time. Usually I travel with a friend or someone, especially if I'm going out into the ocean. I don't like to paddle out into the ocean alone. You always want to be safe, so please, if you're out on a boat or out on a paddleboard or kayak or canoe, don't ever go alone. Always have somebody with you. But I mean, for me this time, the paddleboard, it's really close to the main road and where the bridge is. So I don't think that me being out there by myself really caused any, or would have caused any issues, or anything. I don't think anything really could have happened. I mean, other than maybe, my paddleboard or something breaks or whatever, but then I would just wave somebody down, or I had my phone, or I'd call somebody and they could come, rescue me. Or worst case scenario, I could just stay on the beach overnight. Not a big deal. But anyway, so yeah, that was one of my really best times by myself out on Thanksgiving, and I couldn't have asked for a better day. Even being with my family, like I love to be with my family for the holidays, but that day was just memorable. And I even called my family from the water, and I said, "Look where I am," and they're like laughing at me, and they were like, "Oh, well, it's so cold here." And I'm like, "Well, I'm playing in the water." And they were like, "Isn't the water cold?" And I'm like, "No, not at all. It was beautiful. It was probably 79, 80 degrees. It was just, the water was 79 to 80 degrees. It was just so beautiful." And so that's just one little story that I wanted to share. I have a bunch more, but I wanted to start off with this most recent because it was literally just so nice and peaceful that sometimes you just need that little bit of time away, that little bit of time by yourself. And I mean, I had time to think, and I contemplated on this podcast and things that I was going to do, like I'm doing right now, and speak about this experience. And I just want everyone else to feel the same way I did on these journeys that I have done and that I will do. So if you all have anything that you would like to share with me, and you feel just as genuine as I do about them, please send me an email, and I would love to either have you on the show, or and so you can explain like your most memorable moments in these places. And also, if you don't want to be on the show, and you don't like to speak or talk in public, you can go ahead and just write a description of where you went and how it made you feel, and I will gladly read it to the listeners and give the other listeners a chance to get to know how other people experience things through their journeys of traveling and places and culture and food and just their overall experiences. I mean, I would love to share that with the audience. By the way, if anyone would like to travel to the place that I was referring to in this podcast, it's in Placida, Florida. It's a community in Charlotte County, Florida, in the United States. It's located near where County Road 771 becomes County Road 775, and the Coral Creek meets Gasparilla Sound. I know you can hear the sirens in the background. That's what's wonderful about living right near a fire department. I've tried to soundproof this room as much as possible, and I think the soundproofing only happens within and not from the outside in. But anyway, yeah, so that is where you could find that. It's right near Port Charlotte, Florida, and Inglewood Beach, Manasota Key. It's all within that area. Cape Hayes is nearby. Just a beautiful place to go if you need to, just pack up the kids and decide to take a little fun outing out into the water if you have a boat or canoe or kayak or anything like that. Some people will take their boats and pull up right out in the shallow part, and they play music, and people get out of their boats and set their chairs right down into the water and create this small little community of people that and the boats will have like grills and stuff, and they'll cook some hot dogs and hamburgers, and everyone just has a great time drinking some beer or wine or whatever. Just a great place to be. And before I forget, and before I end this podcast, I also would like to say, if anyone would like to host or have us do a podcast about their Airbnb, or maybe they own a resort, just please make sure you email me, and I'd be glad to do a podcast on your place of business. And this would also be a great opportunity for you to have some foot traffic come to your area. I'm sure the listeners would love to know about a little spot that maybe is not a normal tourist area. So if you have a little Airbnb or a place that, it may not be as common of a place, and there's something nearby, it could be anything like that we could do a podcast about, please make sure you email me and we will work out something. So this podcast is completely just audio. I will be upgrading to a video podcast also, so then I'll have the audio and the video. I'm having a little problems with having my camera set up right now, but as soon as I can get that accomplished, hopefully by the next podcast, then I'll go ahead and have that ready for you all. And if I can figure out how to put these pictures in with these podcasts, maybe in the description or something below, just look forward to seeing the pictures, because like even for this one, to the trip to the little islands, I have pictures that I could put inside there. So hopefully I can figure that out, and then from podcasts to come, I'll be able to not only have the video but also have pictures, and I'll also be able to put links to maybe your Airbnb or links to places that I have been. Or I'm also going to try to add little known facts, like in Placida, Florida. Did you know there's the bunkhouse? The Placida bunkhouse is a historic building that was once a railroad bunkhouse, school, post office, and church meeting place. It's an example of a pre-1920s Florida frame vernacular architecture. So there you go, one little piece of little known fact. And so that'll do it for this episode of Together We Explore. I'm thrilled to have you along for the ride. Be sure to subscribe Together We Explore wherever you get your podcast, and let's set off on our adventure together. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep exploring, and remember, the world is yours to discover.